I'm Dr. Faria Khan. I'm a board certified allergist, and I'm going to talk to you today about something called non-allergic rhinitis. So there are a lot of people out there with a lot of upper airway inflammation symptoms, and this can include things like nasal congestion, runny nose, itchy nose, and a lot of the times we attribute that to having allergies. So when you get tested for allergies, and the test for allergies, by the way, is pretty accurate, and you're told that you don't have allergies, that's when we have to talk about this other entity called non-allergic rhinitis. And non-allergic rhinitis is actually fairly common. It's something that we see a lot. I would say I see it about 3 times a week on average, and that's really at a minimum. Some people have non-allergic rhinitis all by itself, and that's causing all of these symptoms. Other people have it mixed in with allergic rhinitis, which makes it even more complicated. So going back to the idea of upper airway inflammation. So your upper airway's right here, your nose, your sinuses, even into your ears and your throat. And so when you have upper airway inflammation causing the symptoms I mentioned before, you can think of that as your heading, upper airway inflammation or rhinitis. So those are your symptoms. And this can be caused by, as we just talked about, allergies, in which case it would be called allergic rhinitis, or non-allergies, in which case it would be called non-allergic rhinitis. And this is really what we're talking about today. So if you test negative for allergies, then obviously you're not in this category. Again, the test is pretty accurate. So you automatically go into the non-allergic rhinitis category, which, as I mentioned before, is pretty common. So let's talk about this a little bit. So non-allergic rhinitis can be something that happens from a variety of different reasons. One of those reasons is structural problems dealing with the bones of your face and how the natural mucus that you produce in your upper airway has problems maybe draining out or circulating because of those structural problems. So when that is a factor, you would have to see a specialist like an ear, nose, and throat doctor so they could look at those structural issues and perhaps find a way to correct that. But that alone can cause backup of the mucus, the natural mucus that's produced, and then that can lead to stagnation, which can lead to inflammation, and that ends up looking and feeling just like allergies, but again, it's not allergies. It has to do with some structural issue. Another possibility is other internal systems of your body that are influencing mucus production and inflammation up here that have nothing to do with the mechanism that causes allergies. So one of those systems, for example, is your GI tract or your gastrointestinal system. So your gastrointestinal system and your respiratory tract are very close together up here. So if there's any spilling of those kind of strong gastric contents into your respiratory tract, that can track upwards and cause lots of inflammation. So that's an example of some other system within your body that's resulting in inflammation up here that, again, has nothing to do with allergies. Now, you can have both. You can have a little bit of the GI spilling, you can have a little bit of structural problem, and then you can also have this last possible cause of non-allergic rhinitis, which is irritant rhinitis. So this is where there are some people that are really, really sensitive to certain things that they're breathing into the air, and they directly react to it by inflammation of their mucosal linings of the nose and the sinuses. So examples would be things like smoke. Some people are very, very sensitive to smoke, and they can't be around fireplaces, barbecue, cigarette, even a scented candle with one little flame. That smoke can really drive them crazy. Again, this is not most people, but some people are very sensitive to that, and that can really trigger a lot of inflammation. This is, again, not an allergy. Another category of irritants would be things that you smell, like perfume, cologne, bleach, chlorine, any kind of strong smell. For some people, again, not most people, but for some people, it can really drive this horrible inflammatory reaction. Again, that looks and feels like allergies, but again, is not allergies. Another category of irritant is things that you can't smell, but things that we're still breathing in. So we live in a first world country, very developed. There are lots of inorganic and organic compounds in the air that we're breathing, and we can't smell it per se, but it still might be irritating to certain people. And then one last type of irritant would be, amazingly, weather changes. So this can be temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, any of the aspects of the weather that kind of make our environment. For some people, those things can be very irritating if they're within a certain range. So it has to be kind of this perfect storm of humidity, barometric pressure, and it sets them off. Another way to look at this is these are also people that may have problems with atmospheric changes. For instance, walking into a cold building from a hot day outside. So that change really sets off this inflammation. So backing up a little bit about what we just talked about, so we've got this big category of non-allergic rhinitis that can be caused by structural issues, other internal systems within the body, and then irritants. And remember that I was telling you, you can have a combination of all of these things playing a part. So the last thing to go over is you have allergic rhinitis, non-allergic rhinitis, and of course we talked about this in detail. But if you'll notice, they're both kind of coming together right here. They're going to share some of the same inflammatory mediators. That is why a lot of allergy medications can sometimes work for non-allergic rhinitis, because allergy medications really deal with the inflammatory mediators, and the medicines don't really care where the inflammation is coming from. They're just going to deal with the mediators. So there are particular allergy medications that work well for non-allergic rhinitis, and we can discuss that later on in your visit. And that's all there is to say about non-allergic rhinitis. Thanks.